Hey everyone, it's Andrew Bryanton back here. It is November 19th, 2019, and today I'm going to start a series that will be ongoing just because I've got so much material for this series. And I'm going to label it You Did What? And what I mean by that is that I'm going to get into mistakes that I've made over the last 18 or so years. So unfortunately, I do have a lot of material, but I guess fortunately for you at the same time, you get to hear them. Some of them are going to be funny. They did actually happen. I'm not exaggerating. They did actually happen. So some of them will be funny. Other ones will be mistakes that you've made or you're going to make that I've already come across, and maybe I can prevent you from making that mistake. So it's going to be a good mix of both. And like I mentioned, I'm going to stretch this out over multiple videos because I've got lots of material, lots of mistakes, and like I said, there'll be a good mixture of humor and practicality at the same time. So let's get into, I'm going to go 5 at a time, so I'm just going to do 5 today. And like I mentioned, I started a list and I've got quite a few down already, and it didn't take much thinking to get this done, so I'm sure there's going to be lots more that come back to me because like I've mentioned, I have made quite a few mistakes. So my first one that I'll get into, and I'm ashamed to say that this just happened 3 years ago, so you'd think after running a few marathons you wouldn't make this mistake, but my conclusion 3 years ago was that I felt good some days after eating a heavy meal the night before, and especially for whatever reason if I had fish and chips. So fatty fish and French fries, deep fried. So I had the bright idea the night before the marathon, and late at night at that, this was I think probably 8 o'clock before we ate, to go and have fish and chips, fatty, and you're not talking like small fish and chips, like a large order of fish and chips, deep fried before the marathon on the night before. And just what ensued was not good. The next day I ran the marathon. Of course, I felt sluggish, and I think I had to walk part of it towards the end, and wasn't a good time. Dumb race, started out too fast, and that just compounded things with my nutrition. So what I've mentioned already before is that you need to try and maintain that weight that you've had all throughout, and naturally you're probably going to gain maybe a pound or two, but my emphasis has been to try and keep that weight the same because it does have an impact. If you're carrying around, for me it could be easily 5 pounds by the end of it if I had a 2-week taper and was carb loading and eating fish and chips before the marathon. Not good, because you're going to feel sluggish because you're carrying around more weight. Just picture carrying around a 5-pound dumbbell the whole race. Like, that's literally what it would be like. So moral of the story, don't eat fatty foods. Stick to your carb loading. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. That was error number 1, and only happened a few years ago, unfortunately. The next one I'll go into is maybe a little more practical one. Carrying around a water bottle. So this sounds like a great idea, to have liquids and fluids available to you at any time. But as I've mentioned, the water stations are there every 2.5 or 5 kilometers. So it's not something you have to go very long without. And why would you carry around, 1 to 2 pounds of Gatorade or water when it's available for you, pretty frequently, or more frequently than you would need? So just carrying around this weight just seems like it's a waste. It's a waste of your energy carrying that around. And I think I had 1 or 2 water bottles that I was carrying around. And some people do it, and some people are used to training it that way, but I just feel like there's no point in carrying around when you can get access to it any time more than what you would need. So that was mistake number 2 that I made over the years. The next one, going back to my first marathon, and I guess I'll just say that this was, I was naive going into the first one, but first marathon I went into back 17 or 18 years ago, I didn't finish, And a good reason why I didn't finish was because of this mistake. So I think the longest I had run going into the marathon, I might have done 15K. I don't remember doing 15K, but I might have once. Most of it was like 5 and 10K. And being naive that I was back then, I said, oh yeah, what's the big deal? I'll just see, I'll up it, I'll go from 10K to 42, and let's see how that works out. Well, it didn't work out very well. I got to 25K and packed her in. To compound that, I had new sneakers, another no-no. New sneakers, within a week before the marathon. My feet were sore, but that's not what I'm going to blame it on, because it wasn't my sneakers. Just that, it was lack of preparedness, being naive, thinking that I could go from 10K to 42K. Not a good idea. I'll get into maybe in a little later in a different video on training programs and stuff like that, but I'll just stick to sort of a couple of my mistakes here to leave off. Another marathon, and this was back probably 4 or 5 years ago, so it wasn't that long ago either, and this was the only marathon I've done away from home. So I've always had sort of my home terrain to, go to sleep at my bed and have my usual routine, which is very important, of course, for anyone that's doing any type of athletic event the next day. So this was my only one that I've had out of province, and this one happened in New Brunswick, was just a couple hours away. So we're staying in a hotel, and got up the next morning and really didn't think through breakfast very well. So all I had was a piece of toast. So I don't know if I had 1 or 2 pieces of toast, but was no more than 2 pieces of toast that I had. And there's real big problems with just having toast. And I mean, for someone that's maybe 100 pounds, they could get away with that. I was like 200 pounds at that time. A piece of toast is not going to get me through 42K. It just isn't. And I didn't have any nutritional on the race, so it was literally just Gatorade. And I got towards the end and I was just starving. And to compound that, I had 1 or 2 Tylenol during the race as well, so that's going into an empty stomach, and it's just not good. So you need to make sure that you're having a big breakfast the day or the morning of, and whatever that means for you, whatever works good in your system. For me, I double up on my cereal that I have, my dry cereal. So a piece of toast isn't going to cut it, and that leads into my 5th issue, which was after that same marathon that I just had the piece of toast and was starving. I got to the finish line and I'm so hungry at this point. And they had pizza there at the finish line, which a lot of marathons do, and fatty pizza on an empty stomach after having some Tylenols along the way, and just an absolute nightmare. I was so hungry, I just started shoveling pizza in. There was chocolate there. I was just shoveling whatever I could in, and having that much food, greasy food, on that type of a stomach after running an intense race, and I felt like death for the next 3 to 4 hours. My family went out to a restaurant, and I planned to eat something there too, but I laid in the car for that time, and I felt like dying. I felt that awful. So that's the next error that I'll get into, that don't eat a lot after your race. So give yourself some time. Right now, I have chocolate milk, and that's all that I have for the first probably 45 minutes after the race. Let that settle. You usually don't have that much of an appetite anyways if you've done things properly and had enough in the morning. Eventually that does kick in, later that night where you're really hungry, or the next day. But right after, if you can have, chocolate milk to see how that settles, and then, I go into it like a normal meal at that point. Grease or not, as long as the chocolate milk will settle, usually that's a good sign that you can get in. I suggest probably not greasy stuff, but I tend to have French fries and maybe something light like a sandwich or something like that. But that tends to work best for me. But chocolate milk to start with is a really good tester to see how things are going. So that's 5 that I'll get into. I've got lots more material, and like I said, some of them will be funny, some of them will be practical, and some of them I'm sure you'll wonder, how could you ever do that? And especially, it's not your first few marathons, you've run a few, but Yeah, those mistakes I make, we all make stupid mistakes, and I've got lots of material. So come back and see some more. See you later.